What's up, mga kachimek? Mga chimek. Sir Jello is here once again for another episode of... wala naman palang name ang ating vlog. Chemistry! Yay! Another episode of Chemistry. Ang baduy. Anyways, mga kachimek, no, for our discussion today, I'll try to make sure that it will not be an hour length, no? Kasi alam ko medyo natutulog na yung iba, tapos nasasayang lang yung video ni Sir. So as much as possible, I'll try to make this in less than an hour, no? For our objectives, now why do we always start with the objectives? One of my greatest teacher in Filipino, way back in college, no, by the name Dr. Vasil Victoria, always reiterate the importance of our layunin, no? Para daw may patutunguhan tayo. Alam natin kung saan tayo papunta, 'di ba? Ikaw, alam mo ba kung saan ka papunta? O baka papunta ka sa maling tao. Charot. Anyways, no, for this pre-recorded session, we are going to define the following, no, the isotopes, ions, and then distinguish or identify the elements that forms the two different kind of ions, and then later on, we'll use these concepts to fill in some table, no, or to identify some subatomic particles related, no, to the concept of isotopes. Without further ado, let's start with a question. No, not a question. Char lang. It's keywords that you have to pay attention as we go through. Yan ang problem kapag nakashare ang full desktop. Walang kodigo, hindi mo makikita ang next slide. So anyways, no, char lang eh. Practice lang. So, these are the keywords that you have to pay attention because these are the important terms for this pre-recorded discussion. And let me reiterate what I've said earlier. So, eto na. Have you ever seen letters with numbers on the left side of it? No? Or what we call isotopes. Are you familiar with the term isotopes? Hala! Ito na yung mga kinatatakutan ng iba, no? I know some of you, easy na lang si isotopes. This has been discussed in your junior high school, probably. Most especially if you're science-oriented. Pero para sa iba, I think, hala, ito na yung mga kinatatakutan ko. May letter na, may number pa. Diba? Sana all. Yung ang, di na ako mahugot. So, we have a letter and a number. So, ito na yung mga kinatatakutan ng karamihan when it comes to chemistry. Tapos, bakit magkaiba ito, tapos magkaiba ito? So, these are, no, the things that we are going to tackle, no? If you are afraid right now, it's fine, no? But again, as I promised, we'll try to make concepts in chemistry as easy as eating a cake. Tama ba? Piece of cake. Yun na yun. No? Basta para ka lang kumakain ng mani, di ba? Nagmumukbang ka. Anyways, yan. Hopefully, if you're afraid of these numbers and letters right now, later on, hopefully, you will not be afraid. No, for I am with you. Jesus ka, girl. Yan, may lamok. Sorry. So, alright. Now, to formally define why are these numbers arranged like that, di ba? We are used to seeing numbers on the right part, diba? Say for instance, I have X, the symbol, diba? I have X. Sana all. Yeah. Puro na lang sana all. We have 2 here or somewhat 3 here. No, we are sanay. We are used to in seeing numbers like this one. Like your number 2 here is what we call the exponent, but the most appropriate term for that is your superscript. No, bakit superscript? Kasi lumilipad. Yes, si Superman siya. Kidding aside, no, we call it superscript. While the one on the lower right corner is what we call the subscript. Diba? Kasi nasa baba, it's under. No, that's why we call it sub. Paano, sir, pag nasa gitna? Jello the script na yan. Yay! Ay, singit mo pa yan, sir. Anyways, so this is what we've been used to. Ito yung mga nakasanayan natin. But in chemistry, there's another way of using numbers accompanied to letters, no, or what we call specifically symbols. So this is what I'm going to present to you right now. So are you ready, mga kachimek? Alright. So, pay attention to this X. 'Di ba? Si X na ini-ignore natin dati, but we have to pay attention for him right now. No, the X represents the chemical symbol. So, for you not to be confused, all the letters in the periodic table of elements, we call them chemical symbol. No? We will be using 3 different terms: chemical symbol, chemical formula, and chemical equation. So hopefully you will not be confused with these 3 different terms. When we talk about elements and the letter that they use or that we are using to represent them, we are talking about the chemical symbols. So let X be the chemical symbol for your element. And then A is your mass number. Now, I think this is a new term for you. No, again, for some, maybe not. Just a refresher. What do we mean by mass number? No, bilang ng misa sa isang araw, sa Cathedral 5, char. Si mass number is simply the total of all the nucleons. Bisaya ka dun. Nucleons. Now, pinagtatawanan ko ang sarili ko, diba? Sana tumatawa rin kayo kasi mukha na akong addict. Anyways, if you can still remember our discussion on atoms, we described nucleons as protons and your neutrons. So when we talk about mass number, we are simply adding them, not to get their sum, to get their total. Now, we simply add the number of protons to the number of the neutrons to get the mass number. Why is that so? Diba? As I've mentioned during our discussion on the atom as well, that the mass of the nucleus itself, wherein the proton and neutron is located, is mostly responsible for the mass of the entire atom itself, because the electron's mass is negligible. No, it's insignificant. That is why when we talk about the mass of an atom or the mass number, we simply refer to the proton and the neutron. That is why we simply add protons and neutrons to get the mass number, and we place it on the upper left corner, tama, of the chemical symbol. No? So, the mass number is simply the protons plus neutron. The number on the lower left part of the chemical symbol is designated as Z, or is represented by letter Z. What do we mean by letter Z? The letter Z is your atomic number. Sir, eto na yung medyo confusing, di ba? Parang mas madali sana kung yung A na lang yung atomic number. No? Tapos yung Z na lang ang mass number, kasi A means atomic number. Di ba? So bakit kaya ganito yung representation? Sa tingin nyo bakit? Ako hindi ko rin alam. So kung alam nyo, comment nyo sa number 1. No? May attach pala kayo mamaya. So, sa attachment number 1, maglagay kayo. Bakit kaya sa tingin nyo, no, na letter Z ang ginamit for atomic number instead na A, tapos sa mass number, Z? Diba? Zzz. Nagka-problema patuloy tayo. Anyways, the atomic number is the number of protons. Diba? As I've been saying, the identity of an element is dependent on the number of protons itself. So, nakadepende ang identity ng isang element kung ilan ang proton niya. So, when asked if what element is it, no, we don't need to ask, parang ano na siya, apelido, or hindi nga, complete name siya ng isang atom. Diba? Kasi, kailangan mo lang tanungin, ilan ba ang protons? So, pag sinabi kong 10 protons, I won't look anywhere, but I will simply locate the element with 10 protons, or simply the element with an atomic number 10, and that would be neon. Now, si proton associated with the atomic number, that is the identity of an element. So hopefully that is clear. So when we go back, by the way, we also represent the neutron number as N. Ito kasi yung minsan nakakaligtaan, no, hindi masyadong na-emphasize kasi nga neutral. Neutron is represented by letter N. So, if we will go back to an example like this one, if I ask you, how many protons are there in this picture, no, or in this lithium atom? Very good. Galing-galing naman. Ang galing ni baby. No, we have 3 protons because that's the atomic number or the identity. So, lithium atom will always have 3 protons and the atomic number is 3. No. What else can we get from this illustration? Since we learned that the upper left corner is your mass number or your letter A, and then letter A is just equal to the proton plus your neutron, no, we can manipulate the equation. But hopefully you can follow. I know that my proton is 3. Now, how can I get my neutron? I will simply transpose protons to A. So, transposition is a shortcut for additive inverse. Hopefully, you learned that in your mathematics. Pero mas nasanay tayo sa word na transposition. So, I'll subtract the mass number to the number of proton, and that would give me 7 minus 3. The neutron number is 4. Diba? With this very, naglalag, with this very simple information, I derived the subatomic particles. Pero may kulang pa. Sige, ano yung kulang? Sa tingin nyo? In my subatomic particles. Very good! Ang galing-galing naman talaga. Pero kung hindi mo nakuha, okay lang. At least pinuri pa rin kita, diba? Para sa sunod, no? Para sa next session yun. Ang galing-galing mo. So, 7 minus 3, that would give you 4 neutrons. And then, kulang is yung electron mo. No? Your electron. How would you know how many electrons are there? Very simple. Diba? I've been reiterating last time that an atom will always have the same number of protons and electrons. Therefore, your electrons is 3. And now you have the mass number, the proton, the electron, and the neutron without even looking at your periodic table of elements. Yes, nag-timing na. Galing-galing. Galing-galing ni Sir Zella. Pero black ang background, so umitim ako. So, again, as I was saying, no, the proton will tell you the atomic number. So, halimbawa, si Oganesson will be 118. Meaning, 118 ang protons niya, 118 ang electrons niya, and the atomic number is 118. For the mass number, it depends on the electron. Now, we'll give a lot more examples when we have the table later on. So, formally, to define what an isotope is, isotopes, or what an isotopes are atoms. I want to emphasize, these are still atoms of an element, no? Of the same element in particular. However, they differ in the number of the neutron. So, magkaiba yung neutron number nila, yung bilang ng neutral charge inside the nucleus. And then, same atomic number kasi same element lang siya, but they have different mass number. Now, I want to focus on one of the most common example, yet the most different example among all the isotopes. Kasi later, we'll talk about chlorine with few difference in electrons. But I want to emphasize na hydrogen. No? We've learned in the early universe that the hydrogen was the very first element. A proton capturing an electron. Sir, possible ba na walang neutron ng isang atom? Yes. Diba? Because the sole purpose of a neutron is to prevent the protons from repelling each other. Diba? Sa loob ng nucleus, nagbabanggaan sila. So, parang kailangan nila ng bouncer na, oops, di ka para hero, tatigbubulugan. No, chill ka lang dyan. We have a neutron. However, a hydrogen has 1 proton. So, walang mag-aaway sa loob. So, there is a hydrogen, or the most common hydrogen in particular, called the protium. But, don't you worry, I don't need you to memorize the names. So, yan. This could be written as H1. So, this is the notation for the hydrogen without a neutron. No? How about the deuterium? No? With H2. Meaning, mass number niya is 2 kasi it has 1 proton plus 1 neutron, we have 2. So may mga invisible one yan dito. We learned that already, I think, in mathematics, that if the subscript is 1, we don't include them anymore, no? Or if the superscript is 1, given na siya, na meron siyang isa. So si deuterium will be H2, and then so on and so forth. Tritium will have an H3. Alright, so there you have it. Now, the 3 different isotopes. Pwede naman ganito yung pakasulat para mas madali. This is what we call the nuclear notation of an element. So, bakit ko to ginawang example? Again, isotopes are still the same element. However, parang meron silang kakambal, no, na slightly different to each other. Paano ko ba to mas maipapaliwanag na sensible? Halimbawa, no, I have a phone. This is a 30S, if I'm not mistaken. And we've learned, or you know probably, that there is an A30. Merong A40 ba or A50? Somehow like that. So parang this is still a Samsung, this is still an A series. However, they differ in some feature. Some feature, like mas malinaw yung feature ng A50S. Ang picture. Salamat sa mga tumatawa sa mga jokes ko. Kidding aside, they have similarities, but they have little difference na parang may upgrade, may discrepancy in particular. So dito, when we talk about elements, they differ in boiling points, probably. Why is that? Now, sino kaya ang mas mahirap ditong i-boil or i-break? Syempre, the boiling point of deuterium is a bit higher than the protium. Tritium would be the highest. Will have the highest boiling point as well. So, properties like that. However, the most abundant is the H1, no, or the protium. Hydrogen without a neutron. And makikita natin yan if you are holding your periodic table right now, or if you have one, you can check. Bakit 1.001 dyan? Now, we have a computation for that. Now, that we identify the different isotopes and we determine their percentage abundance in the universe, and we compute, no, kung sino ang mas pinakamarami. Yun yung kinukuha natin na atomic mass. Now, later on, as we move forward, especially in chemical formula, we'll discuss, no, how we compute the percentage abundance, no, or the atomic mass of an atom. So there you have it. Now, most elements have their isotopes. No, common example is the sodium, diba? How do we read elements, no, or particularly isotopes with different number of neutrons? Redundant, isotopes with different number of neutrons. How do we read isotopes like this one? So very simple lang ang pagbasa. Hopefully, no, makuha nyo. We simply say Na, or we say the name of the element. So pwede siyang maging Na or sodium, and then we say the mass number. So this will become Na23, and this one is Na24. To be more accurate, we can simply call it sodium-23 and then sodium-24. So question, no, they have the same number of protons. Or example pala, it's not a question. However, they differ in the mass number. That's why they are called isotopes. Now, how many neutrons are there in sodium-23? How many neutrons are there in sodium-24? Sige nga, if you get what I explained a while ago. Okay, very good. Ang galing-galing. We simply subtract mass number 23 to 11. Diba? The formula, 23 minus 11, you'll get 12. 24 minus 11, you'll get 13. So the neutron number differs because we call them isotopes, and they are isotopes of sodium. Alright. So as I've told you, nauna pala yung pagbasa. So it is read as sodium-23. Pwede mo siyang isulat as spelled out sodium-23, or just simply the symbol -23. So any of this, no? Now, slowly you'll realize that you'll becoming a chimic. Nagiging chimic ka na talaga. Now, if you encounter this on the receipts of your medicine or prescription, or even sa mga mga ingredients, 'di ba? Sometimes you'll see elements with the numbers and you'll know that's an isotope of a specific element. 'Di ba? You'll be coming at Shimek now. Now, congrats! Welcome to the club. So let's have an exercise. Char lang. Exercise. Sige, how do we use now the concept of isotopes in determining the subatomic particles? So here, a certain isotope X, palagi na lang X, contains 23 protons and 28 neutrons. First question, what is the mass number of this isotope? So pause the video, kasi baka umaba pa pag ako pa ang nag-post. Yan, nagpa-post na naman ako, tapos gumagalaw ang kortina sa likod ko because of the electric fan. Anyways, please pause the video para matry mo, 'di ba? Sa klase, I'll give 5 to 10 minutes to answer this. What is the mass number? To get the mass number, we simply add the number of protons and the number of neutrons. So that's 23 plus 28. We have, joke lang, bago yon, no, after identifying the mass number, identify the element. So the mass number is, tagal mag-load. Tcharan! The mass number, ladies and gentlemen, is no other than candidate number 51! Congrats! No. Now, what is the element? Hopefully, you have your periodic table with you as we are proceeding. Sige, what is the element? Diba? Some of you probably look at atomic number 51 and there you'll get a wrong answer. Was that calcium? I'm not sure. No? But that's a bit tricky because when we are looking to what an element is, no, again we are referring or we are basing on the proton or the identity of the element itself. So 23 will lead you to no other than vanadium. Diba? Parang Miss Universe lang. Vanadium. That's the element. So that's how we use the concept of isotopes. So now that we learn what the numbers on the left part signifies, now we'll go to another exercise. Pause the video. Sige, hindi na natin to sasagutan. Kayo yung sasagot. So ito na yung ilalagay nyo sa number 2 ng task. Now, copy the table, na be it in a Word file or handwritten, I don't care. Indicate the number or include the number of protons. Fill in what's missing. The number of electrons and the number of neutrons. Pause nyo muna dito or pwedeng balikan nyo na lang after the video. Alright. We proceed now to our next objective. No? Ano kayang, one pick, one word. Hindi pala 4 picks. Anong tinuturo niya? Ion! Baduyon. So we're going to talk about ions. Now, what are ions? Madaming turo. Ions. We learned that atoms are electrically neutral. I've been emphasizing that. What do we mean by that? It is always, the number of protons is always equal to the number of electrons. No? And then, the atom is defined neutral because of that. No? When we talk about atom, automatically, we are referring to neutral charges atoms. No? The atomic charge is determined by the number of protons minus the number of electrons. So, therefore, if I have the same number of protons, I will always have a 0 net charge. Now, 5 protons, tapos in a neutral atom, obviously, 5 electrons din yon. Therefore, the atomic charge is 0. However, now this is not all the case. There are cases that the number of electrons differs from the number of the electrons. Ano daw? Ano sinabi ko? The number of protons is not equal all the time to the number of electrons. And when that occurs, we cannot call them an atom anymore. No, we call them now ion. No, an ion or ions. When an atom becomes charged, meaning hindi na siya neutral because the number of protons and electron is no longer equal, we now call them with a new term, ions. So as we proceed, No, there are two kind of ions. First, this one, ano yung tinuturo dyan? Cat. Diba? Cat ion. The pusa is there. Cat ion. Yay! Ang galing ni Sir Jello mag-joke. Ang baduy. Char lang. Anyway, positively charged atoms are what we call cat ion. They are formed when an atom loses one or more electrons. I'll elaborate on this one later. So, oftentimes nababaliktad si cat ion and the next ion. So, si cat ion, para mas matandaan nyo, kapag cat, no, in an English book I've read, meron daw siyang pause, no? Pause. So, kaya siya positive, di ba? Galing. Pak ganun. Para mas, Filipino, pauso ni Sir Jello. Kapag cat, di ba, sa atin, pusa. Kaya, pusative. Woo! What's up, mga chimek? Kaya siya, cat ion, kasi pusative. The other hand, no, eto, familiar, Filipino, very relevant. Anay. So, we call this anion. These are negatively charged atoms, no? That's why we call them anion. No, abbreviation ko din dito para mas madali. A negative ion. Yay, an ion, a negative ion because it exhibits a negative charge by receiving one or more electrons. So these are the two kinds of ion. Now, from what we previously learned, the atomic number and mass number, we will add another digit, diba, on the upper right corner, or what we call the exponent. Pero again, sabi ko nga, ang technical term nito is a superscript kasi lumilipad siya. So, superscript. So, probably you have seen chemical symbols with this one. So, anong ibig sabihin niya? First question. Hindi na pala sa question kasi nandito na. So, this is this is the charge of your atom. So, since it's already charged, hindi na natin siya tatawagin na atom. But rather, your He and your magnesium becomes now an ion. Diba? Ion na siya. Ion, naglalag. Sige, makisama ka. This is what we now call ion. Now, a charged atom. And since positive yung charge niya, this is what we call now a cat ion. Diba? Kapag cat positive. So, to name this one, this becomes a helium cat ion. This one becomes a magnesium cat ion. Hopefully, that makes sense. Now, saan nanggagaling si positive 2 na charge nila? We learned, ilang minutes na ba? We learned, sorry, baka abutin pa rin ng 1 hour. We learned that cat ion releases or loses an electron or more, diba? Since meron siyang 2 positive, meaning the number of helium, the number of protons is 2 greater than the electrons. Or let me reiterate that because it seems confusing. The number of protons is not equal to the number of electrons. That's why we call them ion. No? And the discrepancy is positive 2. So meaning, my proton is 2 greater than 2 greater than the number of electron. So I learned that the helium has, hindi na gumagana. Makisama ka. Oy. Baka gusto, naubusan na ata ng kulay or naglalag. Oy. Naglag nga. Parang bata. Sige, let me change color. So, si helium, naglalag talaga. Si helium, I learned in atomic number 2 siya, therefore, dito, it has 2 protons. Now, a neutral atom will have 2 electrons as well. However, meron na siya ditong positive 2 charge. Therefore, para ma-accomplish to or ma-satisfy to, I will lose 2 electrons. Therefore, the proton is 2. So, proton, hep na. The proton is 2. The electron, sorry, medyo messy. The electron now becomes 0. So hopefully that makes sense. Si magnesium naman, so para mas malinaw, dito tayo kay magnesium. I learned that the atomic number is 12. And I also learned that in a neutral atom, if I'm going to, tatakpan ko ng kamay ko, if I'm going to cover this one, siyempre hindi ko matatakpan ng kamay ko sa screen. If I'm going to cover this one, si 12 ko will tell me there are 12 protons and 12 electrons. However, meron na tayong superscript, which is the charge. Therefore, the proton now becomes 2 greater than the electron. So, 2 greater than the electron. And again, sir, pwede po bang 14? Gawin kong 14 ang proton. And then, si electron, 12 pa rin. Para positive 2 pa rin yung difference nila. Pwede ba yon? Of course not. Diba? As I've said, the proton is the identity of an element. So meaning, magbago na lang ang lahat, hindi magbabago ang proton. Diba? Proton ka ba? Sana all proton, diba? Hindi nagbabago. Si electron ang nangiiwan. Si electron ang kumakabit sa iba. Si electron ang nawawala. So si X mo, si electron yun. Yan, char. So sana maging proton tayo in a world full of electrons. Be positive in a world full of negative. Diba? Relevance, char. So this becomes 12 protons and then 10 electrons to satisfy the magnesium with 2 positive charge. Ayan, nagana na. So, gagawin mo lang is 12. Your proton is 12. 2 ang charge niya, so it will release 2 electrons. So, instead of having 12, you'll just get 10 electrons. Sige, naglalag na talaga. Anyways, let's proceed to the next slide. So, why are they doing this? Diba? Instead, okay na tayo sana, stable na ang atom, equal ang proton, electron. But why are they losing? Why are they gaining electron? Diba? In junior high school, probably you have learned this, no? Though we will elaborate further in the electron configuration. I just want you to remember that all the atoms in the, or the elements, all the atoms in the periodic table wants to attain a noble gas configuration. Meaning, parang meron silang idol. No? Si noble gases, mula kay helium until oganesson. No? Si layer, sa last part ng periodic table, gusto nila yung gayahin. So that they would be as stable as the noble gases. So they tend to lose or gain an electron. And to achieve that, they are following the Octet Rule. So what do we mean by Octet Rule? Very simple. Again, gusto nilang makuha yung gantong configuration. So ang gagawin nila is all elements in group 1 tends to release 1 electron. Diba? Later, we'll elaborate more on the Louis dot symbol and kung bakit may tigi-isang dot lang sila dito. So for now, since ions pa lang naman tayo, hindi pa naman tayo nagki-chemical formula, ionic and covalent bonding, tandaan nyo lang muna, all the electrons or all the elements in number 1, kaya siya nasa group 1 because they tend to lose 1 electron. So, pag nagbitaw sila ng isang electron, ang magiging symbol nila in the charge will always be H positive 1, pero we don't include 1 anymore. So, this will become H+, ito naman Li+, Na+, K+, Rb+, Cs+. Si Be naman, group 2, will release 2 electrons. So, this becomes Be2+, Mg2+, Ca2+. So, these are their tendency. And so on and so forth. Si boron will release 3 electrons. No? Skip natin si group 4 kasi they tend to share electrons. We go to group 5. So, dito naman kay group 5, here's the catch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ang valence electrons nila or electrons on their outermost shell. Their tendency is not to release the 5 kasi medyo mahirap bitawan yung 5. So, tatanggap sila ng 3 para maging 8. So, this is your octet rule now. N becomes N3 negative or N minus 3. And all the rest of the elements in this part. Si oxygen naman, kailangan niya ng dalawa kasi may 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this becomes O2 negative, the charge, because it will gain 2 along with the sulfur, selenium, and so on and so forth. While fluorine will have, so ignore muna to, ignore ito. So si fluorine will have F negative. So ganun ang arrangement ng periodic table. And if you're not aware, the real periodic table is actually spherical. Bakit ganun? How I wish I was holding a periodic table right now. But if you are holding one, no, pag pinaganyan mo yan, magtatabi si group 1 mo, and then, hindi na gumagana, and then si group 7 mo. Tatakpan mo lang yung group number 8 or the noble gas. So, anong meaning yan? Oftentimes, etong mga nagre-release ng electrons na isa, nakikipartner sila sa mga kailangan ng isa. Diba? Sila yung mga pinagtadhana talaga, no? Pero hindi naman sila limited doon. Pwede naman sila makijamming sa iba. Pero lithium will often combine with fluorine during chemical combination. So this becomes lithium fluoride, sodium chloride, potassium bromide, and so on and so forth. So 1, 2, 3 will release. So these are your cation, and then 5, 6, 7 will accept. So these are your anions. So tandaan yon. Eto, when we are going to name them, this becomes lithium cation, beryllium cation, boron cation. Eto naman, nitrogen anion, oxygen anion, fluorine anion. Hopefully, nagiget naman siya kahit papano. No? We'll give more examples, no, for ions. So, we form ions, again, by losing one or more valence electrons. Kapag nawalan ito ng electrons, yung matitirang shell sa kanila is 8 na. No, except the hydrogen. So, they become balanced. They become as stable as their noble gases. Sige. Diretso na natin. So, say for instance, no, si sodium, as an example, naglalag na ang aking desktop, my bad. So, it acquired the stable outer electron configuration of neon by releasing one of its electron. So, ito. Sige, pabalik-balik. Naglalag. Nagsasarili na siya. Sige. So, halimbawa, si lithium. Lithium is in group number 1. Or, kahit di naman natin alam, meron siyang 1 dot dito. Diba? 1 dot sa Facebook. So, this becomes your valence electron, or this is the valence electron because it's in group 1. So, ang mangyayari, hihiwalay ito para maging as stable siya as helium. So, never mind muna yung configuration. So, this becomes, nawalan siya ng electron, therefore, the protons na 3 dati, tas electron na 3, naging 2 na, it becomes slightly positive charge. So, dapat nasa taas yung positive. Nakaganyan siya. And a free electron. So, this becomes now a free electron waiting to be accepted by someone. So, lilipad muna siya sa ere for quite some time. So, free electron na siya. Paano kapag ganito? Sodium, same, 1 electron. This becomes, sige, di ko na dyan isusulat kasi lalabas lang naman, Na plus another electron. Having the electron configuration of neon. Octet rule, may 8 valence electron siya. Again, kung na-shock pa sa electron configuration, we will elaborate this on a separate topic. So, I want you first to focus on the process of forming ions. So, si calcium, may 2 siyang valence electron. So, magiging Ca2 positive kasi 2 electron ang binitawan niya. Hopefully, that makes sense. So, ang upper right corner niya, ang exponent niya, ang superscript niya is 2 positive. So, si 1, 2, 3 are your cations, no? They tend to have an increasing ionization energy. Diba? If you remember, a plasma is created by ionization, meaning releasing of electrons. So si mga metals natin, 1, 2, 3, tends to release electrons. No? As unlike our anions, which attracts or accept electrons rather than releasing. So ito naman yung kabaliktaran. So they tend to gain electrons. So as we go to the right, to the periodic table, no, increasing ang tendency to accept the electrons. So paano natin siya i-model? So ganito, si fluorine is in group number 7. It has 7 dots. No, para maging 8 ang dots niya, it needs 1 electron. So ang mangyayari, it will receive 1 electron, probably galing kay lithium, kay hydrogen, kaya may hydrogen fluoride tayo, lithium fluoride, potassium fluoride, and magiging complete na siya. However, hindi na siya fluorine atom, but rather fluorine ion, and will be labeled like this one. So F negative, kasi may additional electron na siya. So remember, what is happening inside these atoms are the electrons are being released and being accepted. So if the image and the numbers are quite confusing, so let's see, no, in a deeper sense. So we'll be using Niels Bohr model, but again hindi ganito ang model ng atom. What kind of atom is this, no, or anong atom ito? So how do we determine? We simply count the number of electron. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's atomic number 11, that's sodium. So sodium, gusto niya, according to the Octet Rule, maging 8 yung nasa outer shell niya. So ang choice niya dito, tatanggap siya ng 7 para maging 8, or aalisin niya to para yung panglabas niya, anyo niya na 8. Diba? So ano yung mas madali? So the metals, especially in group 1, would release these electrons rather than gaining 7. So that's not how the nature works. No, that's not how the universe works. So i-release itong electron. Ching! Paalam na sa'yo. Yan, babu. And then, yay! Katulad niya na si neon. So parehas na siya sa neon. Pero anong pinagkaiba niya? Inside the nucleus, 11 pa rin ang protons niya. So we cannot call it neon. But still, a sodium, however, it's a sodium cation because it released 1 electron. Hopefully you're getting the point, no? Parang panggap lang siya na neon, 'di ba? Imitation, 'di ba? Class A, hindi siya original. Kasi alam mo, sa loob-loob niya, hindi siya neon. It's a sodium because the number of protons is still 11. Si electron lang ang nagbawas. However, yeah, it reached stability at some point. And then, yan, luckily, meron nangangailangan ng kanyang electron, so tatanggapin yung electron niya. And then, si chlorine, eto na, naging partially negative kasi kailangan niya ng charge. And later on, i-elaborate naman natin to, di pa naman to part. Nagkakaroon ka na ng compound because your sodium become charged, your chlorine become negatively charged, and that's how you create a compound, di ba? From 2 different ions. How magnificent, no? How wonderful our universe is, creating these different events that we cannot see, but is actually helping us. So, to summarize, kasi medyo mahaba na, if I ask you to give the chemical symbol of the following elements, pause the video. Can you answer this one? Very easy. Hopefully you've paused it. Calcium will just be Ca, iodine will be I. But if I ask you to give the chemical symbol of the following ions, specifically when an ion formed, when a calcium atom loses its valence electron, titingin ka kung anong group number siya, iaalamin mo kung ilan ang possible na mawala sa kanya. So, calcium is in group number 2. Therefore, it will release 2 electrons, making it Ca2+. At si sulfur naman will receive 1 electron. No, 1 ba? I think it's 2. Baka nakalimutan ko lang ilagay. Because it's along with oxygen. Kailangan nyo ng dalawa. So, that's how we write. Again, pwedeng -2 or +2 or 2+, 2 negative. I prefer this way. para hindi siya masyadong math related. Parang ano siya, ma-distinguish natin na we are talking chemistry. And I think that's it, no? For the rest of the period, please create or please write the anion formed cation. Depende kung anong nangyayari dito sa mga atoms, 'di ba? Some accepts, some loses. And what do we mean by Li with that symbol? So if you remember, the Li dot, so ganyan, kasi nasa group 1 siya with 1 valence electron. Tapos nag-release siya ng isang electron. So this becomes Li positive plus the electron it released kasi isa lang. So ganito ang gusto kong makita sa ABCD. And submit it, turn it in. So you have 3 tasks. Kung pinanood mo yung video na sabi ko na yung first 2, ito yung pangatlo. Hopefully you stayed until the end. Thank you. If you have questions, please send me a private comment or sa group chat na lang. This is Sir Jello, mga kachimik. Peace out.